Okay, my friends, I believe that we are live everywhere but Instagram. We are now going live on Instagram. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Christy.
I think we did it, friend. How exciting is this?
I think we did. I'm super excited. One of my very first Instagram lives. So I am super excited to be here. And if you don't mind, I would like to host this.
Oh my gosh, I think that sounds like fun.
Yeah, because I want to introduce my people to you. I had the pleasure of being a guest on your podcast. And now I want to have the pleasure of introducing you to my people. So
Oh my gosh, let's make it happen.
I'm grabbing the microphone. Everyone, welcome to today's Instagram Live. I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Christy McMullen, the host of the Productive Joy podcast. If you're new here, I'm Griselle Scarantino. I'm a career coach. I help mid-career professionals to create more fulfillment and more income in their careers through strategic career transitions. So today we're going to be talking about finding joy and productivity in your work, especially when you're in a career pivot or if you're looking to level up. So, Christy, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you that are just tuning in, Christy's podcast is all about turning fun into action with her AIM approach: analyze, improve, and move. So, we're going to dive into how you can apply this to your work, find more joy in what you do, and stay productive during career transition. So grab your coffee and get ready for some actionable tips. Feel free while we're doing this, if you're able to access the comments, and you can drop questions, you can comment as we go along, because we want to make this interactive and we want to hear from you. So
Love it.
welcome. So, Christy, your concept of AIM, analyze, improve, and move, is so powerful. And in your podcast, you talk about analyzing. So, what I want to do is go through this acronym. You talk about analyzing what you're doing and finding more joy in it. Now, my audience, as you know, is made up of professionals who feel stuck or stagnant in their careers. How do you recommend that professionals start this process of analysis to identify where they can bring more joy into their work?
Well, you got to begin at the beginning, right? If you don't know where you're stuck, then you certainly can't push past the stuckness, if stuckness is a word. So, if you're feeling stuck, or if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, this isn't where I want to be, then step one is to analyze where you are. And I like to look at it this way: we are all doing certain things really, really well. There are other things that we could probably do better. And so when I say analyze, I want you to look at the things you're doing really, really well. And I want you to figure out what about them is going well. Then I want you to think about how to move past them or use those things to make other things better. So the analysis part might be going through your current systems within an organization and saying what's working well and what isn't. Or maybe it's just thinking about, okay, when I'm in this kind of an environment, I thrive. When I'm in this kind of environment, I don't. Once you know where your successes are falling, then you can start to repeat the circumstances that allow for those successes. So the analysis really is stop and go, okay, this is working. Great. Let's check that off. Let's write it down. Let's think about what it is that's working. So if you even back up a step before you analyze, you also have to know where you're wanting to go. So you do such a beautiful job of getting people to figure out, what am I good at? And then what would it look like if I were successful, right? Like, you create targets for people. Well, that target is the thing that you want to hit, but the analysis is what allows you to figure out what will help you hit said target. So if you analyze first, you're looking at what's working and what isn't, and then you're working towards repeating the things that work.
Yeah, and it's also, if I can add to that, it's also knowing yourself and knowing what things feel good to you. What is it that you want to be doing? How is it? What kind of, like you said, what kind of situation is it that enables you to thrive and feel really good? Like, let's hone in on that. Let's put our finger on what that is so we can amplify that and do more of that. Which takes me to the next concept of AIM, the second pillar is improvement.
Yeah.
So for professionals in a mid-career transition or just in their career in general who want to improve their skills, or maybe they want to pivot into something new, or they want to pivot into feeling more joyful, what strategies would you recommend to stay joyful and energized during what could be a challenging time for them?
Great question. And I'm not saying that I have a magic wand, although I do. I do have this wonderful dollar store magic wand that I periodically sprinkle over others. But that's not the kind of improve I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of improve where you've analyzed, right? You've looked at it and said, this works. This doesn't. This works sometimes. And we focus on the things that work and we figure out, how can I do more of that in other spaces? So the improve part really goes to my first book. The book is called Learning Can Stick, a guide to make every learning interaction or experience safe, logical, fun, and memorable. And when I say improve, I mean that the organizational time you're spending, whether that's one-on-one, meeting with 10 people, a presentation with 200 people, you have to make those spaces safe, logical, fun, and memorable. So the safe is psychological safety, right? Like you can't, yes, you should make it physically safe too, but the psychological safety is, do people know they can make mistakes? Do they know they can ask questions? Do they know that it's okay to not have answers? Do you know their names? Do you know their dogs' names? Like, do you know your humans? That's safe. Logical means that you have a plan and you stick to the plan, but you're not the only person who knows the plan. So you're not saying, right, that part. You're not saying, I need you in my office in an hour, because that just causes everybody to stress out. Instead, I need you in my office in an hour to talk about the Smiths because they're coming in at 4:00 and I don't know anything about this file and you do. That's a totally different hour spent, right? So safe, logical, fun, you have to make people release some dopamine, right? Like you have to make your work fun or people quit. Just like your whole career is built on the fact that people are living in a space that's not fun for them, and they need to find the one that's fulfilling and fun. And then the last one is memorable. You have to actually sprinkle the information throughout time instead of making it happen all at once. So your question was, how do you improve? You make all four of those things happen in the spaces that are working. Because if you're repeating safe, logical, fun, and memorable over things that are working, that's going to make more things work. People stick around when they feel like they're valued and appreciated, that somebody notices that they exist and that they can contribute to the greater good. But if we're not doing that, we are not making the situation better. We're not using what we know works to make other things happen. So the improve is, okay, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to look at it different from the way I have before, and make some really awesome stuff happen.
That is solid gold for people who are listening that are in leadership positions where they are in charge of creating an environment, a work environment that people want to come to it. They want to bring their best self to it, and they want to stay there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remind us, what is the name of that book?
It's called Learning Can Stick, a guide to make every learning experience safe, logical, fun, and memorable. And fun fact, it's now out on Audible. I just released it last week. I'm so excited. It was a really fun experience. It's me narrating it. So if I don't annoy you yet, you can listen to me read a whole book to you, which is exciting. But what was cool about that process is that, I wrote the book in 2020 and just recorded it 5 or 6 weeks ago. And to go back and read what I had written literally out loud to myself in a room was so... It was humbling, but it was also powerful, because the things I said still stand, right? Those things are actually going to work in any industry.
Right, because humans are going to be humans no matter what time in the century we're in.
2020 or otherwise, right?
Right. Oh my goodness. That's fantastic. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so your next pillar is move. So what advice do you have for someone who's ready to move in their career, in their life, but they're hesitant to do so out of fear of uncertainty about their next steps, fear of failure, just fear in general, because fear is that monster that keeps us in place. Even it keeps us in our comfort zone, even when that comfort zone is uncomfortable
and toxic, right?
Yeah.
So the move part is the hardest part because we know better, but we don't always do better. So I call that the knowing doing gap. And sometimes it's a chasm, right? Like I know I should eat salads and sleep 8 hours a night and exercise every day, but do I do those things every single day? Maybe not. So it's not so much about what we know. That's the analyze and improve. I know that I should approach meetings differently. And I know that I should prep for presentations in a different way. And I know that I'm going to be boring in this presentation because I have 84 points that I'm going to try to cover in 45 minutes. I know that. But what the heck are you going to do about it, right? So the move part is really changing practice. So what's the one thing you're going to tackle this week? What's the one thing you're going to tackle this month? Coming up with a 30, 60, 90-day plan, revisiting that plan with people and saying, all right, you said you were going to try this thing. How's that going? Because the reality is it takes 18 times of doing something in front of others to master it. But we tend to say, I tried that with that client yesterday. It didn't work. I will never do it again. Well, you have to do it 17 more times before you can say, nope, that didn't work. So it's really about giving yourself grace to screw up, to not necessarily get it all right, and then to move past it. So I have a book I really liked, read maybe 6 or 8 months ago, called The Gap and the Gain. And in The Gap and the Gain, it talks about the fact that most of us live the bulk of our life in the gap. Are you going to grab a copy of it because it's right there? Oh, you're writing it down.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, if she has it right there.
No.
So I actually listened to it, then I read it, both of which were powerful. But what happens particularly for those of us that are a little type A, a little, go-getter type humans, we live in the gap. We're constantly saying, I'll enjoy it when this happens, when I reach this milestone, when I have 1,000 followers, when I have 10,000 followers, when I have 1,000,000 followers. Well, at what point are you going to celebrate the fact that you used to have 4 and now you have 44? So it's learning to live in the gain, in the in between where I was and where I am today. Not where I want to be. It's great to have those goals, that target, but are you celebrating the milestones along the way? Because that's what keeps you moving. So move is about trying something, trying it again, tweaking it a little bit, trying it again, giving yourself some grace, and living in the game.
This we could talk about this for days. I have this conversation with my clients so often about how not only breaking things down into small achievable chunks, like you said, which is such valuable advice, such a wonderful way to continue putting one foot in front of the other towards your goals. Make them small achievable chunks. But the other thing is embracing the journey that you're in, which sounds so cliche, right? It's all about the journey. You got to embrace the journey. It's been used so many times that it's played out, but it is so true that it's all about the journey, because you are living inside of that journey every day.
Yeah.
And if you're disregarding those milestones that you're accomplishing, when you've broken things down, when you've broken those big, awesome, fantastic, inspiring goals down into those small, achievable chunks, and you accomplish those milestones, are you celebrating them or are you disregarding them? Because if you're disregarding them, then you're just going to be exhausted and wear yourself out, continuing to try to, get to this thing that is a little farther out than right now. Right?
And pretty unattainable, right? Like it's not something that you will ever reach because you'll just keep moving the mark, right? So I use that example of number of followers on purpose because as soon as you reach the milestone, you move the mark. You're like, oh, well, yeah, I thought that was going to do it. I know Ed Mylett talks about this a lot in his podcast about, you think when I have enough money, when I have enough fame, when I do this big thing, then I'll feel fulfilled. And then you do the thing and you're like, Okay, I guess I need to do the next thing. And you don't give yourself a minute to celebrate the, oh my gosh. Like I had that moment just the other day about the podcast because I've started it in February of this year and I have faithfully published 2 a week every week since February. And so I'm on episode, I think 76 is going to drop on Tuesday, which I know, right? And have I taken one darn minute to say, holy crap, like somebody other than just my husband who has to listen because he loves me, has listened to these. And no, it's not thousands of people yet, but different people are listening for different reasons and really cool stuff is happening because of it. I have to learn to live in the game and say, oh my gosh, I didn't think that I would have almost 80 episodes. Well, I have more than 80 recorded now in less than a year. No, if you had told me that in February, I'd have been like, yeah, that sounds good, but no. So I want to encourage anybody who's listening right now that whatever's going on in your space, live in the game. Give yourself a minute to say, holy cow, I did a thing. This is big because it is.
It is, and that whole thing about not recognizing those achievements, those milestones, not taking the time to celebrate, always asking, okay, well, I got here, well, what's next? That's something that is very common with high achievers, and it's what just keeps us going and going and going and going until we're exhausted.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I wrote this down: The Gap and the Gain. I need that book and I need to share it with people because I know that so many people can relate to that whole thing. And speaking of that, work-life balance, right? That's a big topic in my community. How do you help listeners to maintain and increase joy while they're managing the demands of work and personal life, especially when they're trying to grow and strive for that next step and the next step?
Yeah. So I'm going to quote a dear, dear friend of mine, Kelsey Stevens, who talks about the fact that in life, we're constantly juggling. We're juggling life and work and, social life and health and all the things. And some of the things that we're juggling are glass balls and others are rubber balls. So if you think about juggling, right, you don't want to drop a glass ball. You drop a glass ball, it's not repairable. You drop a rubber ball, it bounces. So of course, family should be a glass ball. But going to the 4th rehearsal of the week for a show that's not happening for 3 months versus missing it, that's actually a rubber ball, right? Even though you want to watch your daughter do this amazing thing, if you miss a rehearsal, it's going to be okay. If you miss the performance that happens once after 7 months of practice, that's a glass ball. You're going to have meetings at work that you cannot miss. This is a big client and it could change the trajectory of your entire income for the year. You need to protect that glass ball. But you're also going to be able to drop the meeting that you could listen on 2.5 speed or 1.5 speed afterwards because it's not a contribution type of meeting. It's a listening type of meeting. That's a rubber ball. So there is no such thing as balance. We are constantly juggling, but we also need to be aware that some things can take a backseat to others at different points as long as we're paying attention.
Yeah, that's exactly why in one of my courses, I offer a decision tree as a bonus tool. And that decision tree helps us to recognize when it's okay to say no. In your words, when to recognize when something's a rubber ball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. So shout out to Kelsey Stevens because she really nailed that analogy and it's carried me a long way. And it's also being conscious about it, right? You don't have to just juggle blindly. You know what's coming. So you can look at your week and you can say, these 3 things are making it over the priority line today. That also means I'm not going to clean the playroom. I'm going to shut that door, right? I am going to keep the kitchen clean because that makes me crazy if it's not. But today, this day, it's okay for me to shut the door and not look at the mess. I think particularly as women, I can only speak as a woman because that's what I am. But I know that I also carry the burden of, and it's not a burden, it's a blessing of the dogs and the husband and the children who are grown, but still, need food sometimes and, friends. And I've got all this stuff I'm trying to figure out how to manage. And sometimes I just need to look at my day and go, that's not going to make it above the line today. It's just not.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. So to round out this conversation, how can we cultivate a sense of joy and productivity, not just for ourselves, but with the people that we work with our family, with the people around us? How can we cultivate that sense of joy and productivity?
So, the most fun thing that I've done with this podcast is I've asked every single guest, what's your definition of productive joy? And of all the episodes, I've never gotten exactly the same answer. And there are some similarities in almost every answer. The number one being joy is a choice. Joy is something that you have to choose to be. You don't wake up happy every single day. You don't wake up with this, grin on your. No, you can be content and pleased and joyous, but being joyful is a choice. So to me, step one is to decide, how do I want to feel today? Right? Like, do I want to waller in self-pity today? Because if I do, that's a choice too, and I'm allowed to make it. But if I choose to stay there, what effect is that going to have on me long term? And then the productive piece of it is, I love fun, right? Like did you and I talk about the Enneagram? I talk about it a lot. I'm an Enneagram 7. That's a personality test. And a 7 is an enthusiastic optimist. We love fun. Yay for fun. And yet that makes some people crazy. And I know that, but it also, I don't want it to be a false fun. I don't want it to be a manufactured feeling. I want it to be a genuine joy. So I choose to look for the happy. I choose to look for the good. It's there. So's the bad, but I'm not going to focus on that. So if I'm trying to define productive joy, I'm first going to choose joy. And then I'm going to say, what can I accomplish today because I'm feeling pretty good? Right? What can I do today? Which glass balls can I keep in the air? Which thing am I going to move towards? How am I going to use what I analyzed to improve how I'm doing things to move towards action? What am I aiming for? All of that goes together for me to create what I set out to create. And some days that's just simple spending time with my family. That's productive. Mm-hmm. Other days it's, cranking out 2 or 3 podcasts or, starting a Instagram live with a dear friend who, it has its wonderful audience that doesn't know who I am yet. That's productive. So if you are listening and you're trying to figure out how in the world could I create productive joy, start with the fact that joy is a choice. And then once you decide you're going to look for the good, find ways that the good can actually lead you towards action.
Beautiful. And figure out which of the glass balls you can juggle and which ones need to be put in a, secure box with lots of padding. And you can come back to those tomorrow.
That is a really good point, right? You don't have to keep them in the air all the time either. Nobody says you have to keep juggling it. You can place that Fabergé egg in a box.
Last question. If you could meet just one famous person, who would it be and why?
So in this particular stage of my life, I think that person would be Brené Brown. So when I first started listening to podcasts, Brené Brown launched hers. It was actually in March of 2020. I remember distinctly, I was painting a door frame in our old house, not this house. And I'm painting the door frame, listening to her record her first podcast from a closet, not knowing what in the heck she was doing. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I already liked her. I knew of her, but I had not ever really spent time with her. I'd read her books, which I found to be hard because they were so densely technical. And then I listened to her talk and I'm like, oh, I want to be her when I grow up, right? Like I want to be able to focus on the fact that you are brilliant in everything that you do, and I want to learn from you. So I think I have tried to emulate some of her authenticity and vulnerability. And so if I could spend time with her and just say thank you for sharing her brilliance, for being one of the first truly authentic women to just say, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And then let her know how much she's inspired me. I think that would be a lot of fun.
That's so beautiful. Well, I'm going to look for her. Like wherever this live conversation has been posted, I'm going to look for her and I'm going to tag her on it so that maybe she will see this conversation. She'll see you and maybe parts of that can happen and the two of you can connect, because yeah, she
Lord,
is.
if I could actually have a conversation with her about Clear as Kind, the story I'm telling myself, and the effing first time, then my life would be complete.
Okay, Brene. Brene, did you hear that? We have a fan here that really wants to spend some time with you. Thank you for that. So, Christy, thank you. Thanks for spending this time with me today. I really enjoyed this conversation. There were some powerful nuggets and tidbits in there. So, just to recap, we talked about the importance of analyzing what brings us joy, improving our habits to be more productive, and then moving forward with confidence, even when we're stepping in new career directions, even when it means putting down the glass ball, just moving forward with confidence. So, if you want to learn more about bringing joy and action into your work, make sure you follow Dr. Christy McMullen and listen to her podcast. It's Productive Joy. I'll make sure to add the links to that as well so people can find you. And if you're navigating a career transition and you want support in making strategic moves with confidence, check out my courses, DM me, get in touch with me. I'm here to support you. So, Christy, thanks again for joining us. It was such a pleasure spending this time with you. It's always such a pleasure chatting with you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you in the next one.
Yay! So
Bye.
much fun. Bye, friends. All right. I think I ended